Flag Day.
Flag Day.
Flag Day.
There's two of those.
Hi.
Thank you. Are we all being
Sure.
Is
Sure.
that? I was gonna be proud. I was gonna be proud of us. I don't know, I saw library board
That's right.
member, school board members going, I'm in office, so I guess it's probably not. I was like, oh, I recognize.
She probably has to be in that one.
Probably. I'll more than
Yeah.
It is 5:01, so I will call the library board meeting to order. Can I have a roll call, please?
Sure, Nelson,
Here.
Stata,
Here.
Goblin,
Here.
Beshin,
Here.
Bouncenfield,
Here.
Reese,
Here.
and Bergstrom. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda, please?
So moved.
I'll second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Community input, you got anything for us today?
No, but thank you.
Okay.
Someday she's just gonna.
She's just gonna
Yeah,
explode.
there's
It's gonna be
so much to
amazing. Okay, can I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes from May 23rd? May 2023 meeting, please.
So moved.
Okay. I'll second it. All in favor, say aye.
Open my mouth.
Aye.
Okay, review and payment, can I have a motion to review and pay bills and accept financial reports together?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Jennifer, wanna share anything?
So there is two additions. One, the Mark Hayward invoice on the print copy you have was added since the packet was emailed out. There's an additional invoice we got just before the meeting that's due before we meet again for Omni Technologies. Laura, do you have that invoice over there with you? I'll pass a copy of that, the Omni one.
I don't have the info.
Oh, I'm sorry, that
I'm
was your
sorry,
stack.
I was
I
gonna bring it.
misunderstood, I apologize.
Yeah, my bad.
I will look up the amount for that so that we can approve, or consider approving that with everything else.
I have the amount,
If you could just read the amount off for everybody, that'd be
It's-
appreciated.
$9,796.40.
And that's for,
That's for the, we took the AV out of the contract with Trinorth, and that's the first installment of the cost of the AV system for the, or the camera system for the new library.
okay.
What's the company on that?
Omni Technologies,
Technologies.
You're local,
correct?
And it was taken away from where?
So we took it out of the contract with Trinorth,
Okay.
and then we're doing it directly, which will actually help us, well, it helped us with saving some money and also with being able to do the contract long-term for the monitoring and other things.
Got it. Thanks. Good.
I do have one question on here because I don't know what it is.
Yes.
On page 13 of the packet, your fund equity, it says lound, $10,000. What is lound?
That is a balance from an estate gift, I believe, that
So
we have.
it's a surname.
Yeah.
Okay, that's, I was like, what is a lound? Maybe that's a like
No, it's that person's last name.
misspelling, a loaned, or
Oh, yeah.
okay, so I just didn't know. Thank you.
That's perfect. Okay, any questions for Jennifer? Okay, all in favor of approving and paying bills, including the Omni, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Anything for the financial reports? So-
No.
Okay, building project change orders 3 and 4.
So there's two separate change orders just because I needed one for the deduct amounts for billing purposes. They split it into two. I'm just gonna pull that up and see if there's anything to highlight. So the change order number 3 is just to, what we approved last month to take the security camera system out of the Tri-North contract. So this is contractually doing that, and then just adjusting the contract amount by the cost savings that we have. And then the second change order is for a variety of miscellaneous things, including some minimal soil undercutting, some plumbing changes. There's a backflow prevention valve they added, changed some ceiling insulation stuff, glazing changes to windows, and then just some low voltage changes to, gosh, I can't remember what that was for.
I think it's the
And
line.
like some data and.
Oh, like locations of data, cabling, and just minor tweaks to those systems, including, yeah, just a various things. If you have any questions about this, I'm happy to talk more about any one. We can pull up the documentation that's with it to go in more depth.
Question?
These have all been reviewed by our owner's rep and discussed at the project meetings, and some we don't have choices on to doing. Go ahead.
So you have no concerns about any of this?
Do not.
Okay, thanks.
Can I make a brand new point? The Village of Oregon acting through its library board is the wrong its.
That's the language provided by the village attorney, as is.
How?
So that's why we're using it that way. So that's how they asked us to put all the contract document together, and so that's the way
My
that it
heart
appears.
hurts. I want you to know that. Let it be noted that my heart hurts.
We will put that in the minutes.
That was copied directly from
Thank
the email correspondence with the attorney about how we should have the contracts read, so.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm gonna just not look at it anymore, guys. Just like scroll away. That's my only question.
Okay. So, all in favor of approving the change orders 3 and 4? Or do I need
Did
a-
you do a?
I didn't do a motion. Can I have a motion to approve the change orders?
So moved.
Second? Any questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Next is the election of officers.
So Laura, do you wanna talk about that? There's a memo in the packet. I'm gonna let Laura talk about that as the, about the nominations, but we have a bylaws that say a nominating committee is gonna be appointed, which we did. Laura worked on the nominations along with Carleen.
No.
And so then Laura has a slate of officers presented. This was in the packet before. We can also take nominations from the floor, so if somebody's changed their mind or wants to make different nominations than are presented, that's acceptable as well. And then I'm gonna let Laura talk about anything related to the nominations. Go ahead.
Sure. So the slate of officers that the nominating committee is presenting is on page 44 of the packet, in case you also need to scroll all the way down like I did. The nominees are Laura Stata for president. She's the next longest serving member of the board, and she seems to feel up to the task. Jenny Nelson will step down to vice president, as she has served her full term as president. And then Carleen Beshin and Coral Goblin will stay in their current roles as secretary and treasurer. That is the recommendation of the nominating committee.
I think I have to ask 3 times if there's nominations from the floor. Any nominations from the floor? Any nominations from the floor? Any nominations from the floor?
I move the nominations be closed and we proceed with the vote.
Thank you. We probably need a motion to accept the nominations.
So moved.
There's a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Thank you guys for being willing to do different things. Appreciate it. Next is designation of authorized signers for bank accounts. This is because we're switching some roles.
And so whenever we switch roles, we need to update the signature cards. Most of our accounts are managed through the Village of Oregon, with the exception of the WACMAN funds, which are a gift that the library got through an estate bequest. And so those, we still report through the village, but the library manages the bank account for those. They're restricted for specific uses. And so we need a motion to designate the president with their name, the treasurer with their name, and me as the authorized signers. Any action requires 2 to 3 signers to sign off on that action. We really never issue checks from it, but we could if they were pre-approved by the library board.
Can I have a motion to designate the library board president, treasurer, and Jennifer Way as signers for library board?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
And just a clarification, the bank requires the minutes of this meeting with that action. Is it okay for Laura to insert the name of those folks
Yeah.
based on the previous action to reflect that? Thank you.
Awesome. Omni Technologies proposal for cellular and monitoring services.
So one of the other things we'll be doing as we work for the budget is we'll be needing to anticipate our operating expenses for the new building. Some of those are easier to set, and so one of the things that we need in place is monitoring and cellular services. So instead of having a phone line, we're gonna have a cellular wireless dialer for fire and elevator monitoring for safety for those. Which will save us on some phone system costs, but we do have to provide the cellular service for that connection in case of emergency event. We also have monitoring services that are provided 24/7 for the fire alarm, the two-way communication, and the elevator emergency phone. So like if somebody were to get stuck in the elevator, there's a monitoring service that would get that phone call and would go through a call tree, so we make sure that those concerns get to the appropriate people based on our preferences. And so basically, Omni is the company that's doing the low voltage systems, so they're already involved in them. So we don't have to worry about communicating between different vendors and each vendor having issues with part of it not working and, attributing that to somebody else. So having one vendor provide those services is important. In addition, some of these services are required for us to get our occupancy permits, so that we need to make sure those are up and running before we can move in. And for that reason, this is the ideal company to do that, because then we can make sure there's no delays in moving the project forward. The quote's been reviewed and is a reasonable quote for those services. We can always reevaluate in future years, but this first year would be ideal to have with that same provider.
And it's nice because Omni's a block from the library, so
You can come fix that anytime.
you can come check on things. So, can I have a motion to accept the proposal for cellular and monitoring services by Omni?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Questions, discussion?
The grand total here, the 1680, is this just installation or how does
That's
it work
for,
out?
no, that's for 1 year of services.
Oh, good, okay.
Yeah.
And the installation is included in that?
Installation is part of the
Construction
construction
costs.
costs.
Okay, so it's listed earlier?
Yeah.
Okay.
All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next is the TICE proposal and preliminary concepts.
So there's 2 parts to this. One is the concepts to update you on, and the other thing is there's proposals for additional services beyond what we talked about last month. Do you want to start with the concept?
Yeah,
first?
I'm very excited about it. If you haven't seen the pictures, it makes me very happy. So the first one, we showed you guys the wall of gratitude previously. So those are just kind of a reminder of what the donor wall will look like, as well as the front logo you'll be able to see from outside. So then if you kind of scroll down in the space, you can see kind of the nook for the kids area, and working with TICE, they have come up with some really cool, it's kind of a journey through the bike path around the space. So there's all sorts of cool birds and turtles, and it's kind of fun. The little bike rider person actually has an O for Oregon on their back of their hoodie, if you check that out. So we're double checking some of the animals to make sure that they're the right animals, but
That's fair.
But we got
Seems
some.
like something that would end up on the Facebook page.
Yes, so we're close. There are some tweaks that will be made. And then it's kind of fun, onto the glass for the slider. is kind of the bridge, and we're gonna probably fill in the flower space a little bit more, so there's a little more privacy on the window. When the door's closed, you won't necessarily see it, but when it's open, it looks like it's continuing the path, so that's part of the vinyl there. If you keep scrolling, there is, there's a little tree on the side window, which is exciting. And then the area that's near, that enters into the kind of the staff area where the children's desk is, we decided instead of just painting it yellow, it would be kind of cool to tie all of that together. So there's some of those same kind of graphics there, as well as a magnetic yellow whiteboard, so that way if they want to put notes or be able to update people there, they'll be able to use that space. And then there's kind of an overview picture from the hallway there. We went through with Miss Kelly to see kind of how much film she wants on her window, so some of those cutouts are so that she can still see out a little bit more, so there'll probably be a little more cutouts, but that way she's not in a fishbowl as well. Some zoom in of the fun turtles and bees and red-winged blackbirds that I almost got attacked by today out on a golf course, but got too close to its nest, I think. So then the last couple pages, there's two different ideas for the glass sliding door. My preference really is the bridge one. We are kind of, if you guys have thoughts one way or the other, there's not really a cost difference, it's just kind of a idea preference. So if you guys have thoughts on this, we'd love that feedback. But that's kind of the idea for the kids space, which we're very excited about.
I like the bridge.
You like the bridge?
I think it ties into like the location and all that really, really nicely.
Yeah,
I agree.
I agree. I have a question.
Yep.
So the bookshelves, are they all the way back against this wall?
So the bookshelves will be against the wall. They will not have a wooden back. So like when you look
So
behind
you'd
the
be able
shelf,
to
if the
see-
shelf was
so
empty,
you
you would
could-
be able to see what's behind
You
it.
can see this through.
Yes, so we asked them to do wallpaper on the full wall so that you, either if the bookshelf ever moved or if the shelf were empty, then you'd be able to see whatever graphic part of the wall is behind it.
Yeah. And then I agree, I like the bridge, it's just really nice continuation of the trail. I like too that on the side where or maybe I'm not seeing that, maybe it's actually the corner. I'm looking at page 81. It makes it look like the wheel is coming around that corner, but it's probably that line.
Yeah, that's
is
just
the-
before the corner, so
just
the
before
black
the
line to the
corner,
right of the
yeah.
wheel is
Yeah.
where the corner is, yep.
Got it.
Kind of wraps with the graphic though, so you're right, it looks kind of like it.
It kind of has a underlying secondary meaning of bridge to learning.
That's awesome.
It just hit me.
I love it.
The only thing missing are the geese that attack you every second.
We don't need to commemorate those guys.
The Tyson people made the same comment. They asked if we wanted to add some geese.
Nope.
No.
Hard pass on that.
Are we, oh, that's a quote, never mind. Never mind.
And Miss Kelly has looked
We're
through
no longer
and been a part of the conversations, and she's excited too, so it was really fun to like watch her get like excited about it.
The
So
animals were, the Nature Alliance provided a list of animals that they felt were most commonly present or best represented the Keller Alpine Meadows Park area. And so they sent a list, and then they also sent some photos that one of their members had taken. And so that was provided to Tycee. I'm not sure the crane is the right type, so we're gonna be verifying that just to make sure that the species they shared are the ones that are represented. Our goal is to kind of tell the story of the place and kind of ground the graphic in the location. The plants they looked up are all supposed to be native plants. The cattail might be an invasive species, but we can use that as an educational
learning
piece as well.
That's fair.
So that's the one. Those are kind of some things there, but I did get a point from somebody about the crane that might not be the correct
Yeah,
type of crane.
It looks like that's a whooping crane.
Yeah,
The
it's-
sandhill
It
cranes.
seems to be a sandhill
gray.
crane. Yeah, and that's what the comment was. It's more gray-brown
Yeah.
feathers. It looks beautiful visually, but we'll be updating that particular element for sure.
And I was just kidding about the geese.
You're just trying to repair our relationship. I don't know. We'll see.
So, and that's a snapping turtle.
Was it the wrong kind of turtle?
No, they're just really nasty.
Oh.
Very terrifying.
Right.
Some turtles
I mean,
as well, evidently.
Painted turtles are nicer. They're nicer turtles, they won't bite your finger off.
And I know you mentioned maybe adding a little bit more to the bottom of the doors down there.
Yeah.
I wonder if, because all spring and summer, there are kids fishing near that bridge, if maybe that could be an element that be included if you were looking for more on the bottom, just a suggestion.
We will ask.
And you can always say,
The beauty of
Because
it's
they
a
will be-
final, so we can always change it in the future. So
that's great.
And it's cleanable, we did ask that question. I don't know why we would need it to be cleanable in the children's section. Okay, so I think that's kind of the preliminary concepts. The proposal,
So there's two proposals in the packet. One is to actually, last time they did a quote just to design the area behind the children's desk because they can't tell us how much the fabrication will cost until they know what's going into it. So if they just do wallpaper, it's different than other elements. So you have in your packet the cost for the installation of that area as designed or will be tweaked for the behind the youth services desk. That's proposal one. The second proposal is a proposal to consider having Tycee do a design for what we're calling the circle wall, which is in the children's area. As you enter the children's area, there's a wall that has a circle entrance where kids can walk through and adults can't. And then there's also some circle areas with windows where kids can kind of curl up with a book and read in that area. There was a design included as part of the architectural theme, but now that we've kind of developed the nature theme to the children's area, while that area is very nice looking, we're wondering if it might be a good thing just to consider if there's a better fit that would continue the nature theme through that area a little bit more strongly. What we're asking for tonight is for you to approve the design, and then what we would do is we have a building committee who did review and approve that original design. So what we would do is take that design to them and say, here are the options, here's what you originally chose, here's what other alternatives Tycee provided, what do you think fits best? And it would be up to the building committee to decide if they wanted to ask to incorporate one of those designs or whether they wanted to stick with the original element and what kind of fits the best at that point.
when we were first designing, we didn't even know if we'd have money for graphics. So we figured this is the point now to kind of make sure that we're tying everything together if it makes sense. And so we'll be reconvening the building committee for that.
It'll be the full building committee or a subcommittee?
It would be
And
the full building
Yeah,
committee.
whoever is available from the building
Okay.
committee.
And
I'll
when-
be,
also.
if this gets approved tonight, I would be sending an email out to the building committee tomorrow to try to find a time in early July that would meet as many people's schedule as possible.
Thank you.
Okay, so can I have a motion to approve the two proposals from Tycee?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions, discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
And I should just address funding for those proposals. We have continued to get significant donations in recent weeks. We're verifying donor recognition, and a few folks are choosing to add to their donation for purposes of donor recognition and just to get in before the deadline for the recognition for the project. So we do have funding and donations that offsets the costs, so we're not going in the red by approving that.
Yay.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that, and hopefully you're excited about the graphics, because I was.
They're really cool.
Excellent.
Really nice.
It makes me happy, so.
Yeah.
Next is the designation of Sue Ames naming opportunity in the new library.
So this is in your packet. This is something we talked about for a while, and we were just trying to wait and see which naming opportunities were selected as part of the project. But as many of you know, the Sue Ames Room has served as an important space in the current library since the library opened. We've had very, very many library programs, and also many community meetings have been held in that place as part of her bequest. When she passed away, the library, or the Friends of the Library, got $86,000, which the Friends put towards the library project when the current library was being constructed, which is an amount that's very similar to a lot of our naming opportunities that are noteworthy in our current project. So for 28 years, you know, countless people have gone into that Sue Ames room and really used that as a meeting space for the community. And so because of that significant contribution, it's worth considering whether we'd like to continue honoring that legacy in the new library space as a kind of a special continuation of that legacy. One space that I would put forth as an option, if you wish to do that, would be the conference room, since the size of the room, the purpose of the room, the function will be very similar in that they'll be having community members get together and gather. Size is very similar, things like that. So that's just one opportunity. You could choose any other opportunity that's still available, or you could choose not to do anything with it. But we will be working on signage for naming opportunities in July and August, and so that's kind of the time to have that conversation as we're wrapping up the capital campaign and closing the ability to donate for donor recognitions.
Question.
Yes?
So board conference room says the availability is pending. Is that being held for the Ames?
I marked it as pending so that we could talk about this after our last board meeting. If we choose not to do anything with it, I could mark it as available again for
Got
other
it.
community
And is
members.
that also true for the community room as well?
That we took action at the previous meeting, and we just have not been able to, we had a meeting scheduled with that donor about that, so we marked it as pending so that if somebody else saw it, that they would realize that it was potentially not available for
But you
them.
do have somebody that's looking into it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
I would love for the board and the conference room to be the Sue Ames room. I think
So-
that's an important thing to honor, especially given kind of the history of our current building.
And one thing I should clarify too is in the new library, we won't call each individual room after
Yep.
the person that donated it,
Yep.
but we would have signage at each space, and so we would probably still call it the conference room or the board room or however we choose to call it.
Yeah.
So there would be just a slight change there, but it would still have the recognition for Sue Ames in that space.
I just want to clarify, you're asking us if we think that that's an appropriate
Yes.
way to, okay. I
Correct.
totally agree. I think it's appropriate to have an important space in the new library because she was so important to the old library and continues to be in this case. So I agree with Carl.
I think it's important to maintain the legacy.
Mhm.
It's part of our history.
So I guess I would entertain a motion to designate the board/conference room as the Sue Ames, in memory of Sue Ames, or the Sue Ames room in the new library.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. TDS agreement for phone services,
So-
200 North Alpine.
Typically, the library falls under the village's agreement for phone services. However, because we're moving to a new space, we require our own separate phone equipment, which means that we also require our own separate phone contract. The village, we talked to the village's rep, and they have really good pricing through the end of June. That if we approve this, we can lock in that pricing. We can still make changes or decide not to proceed with the service up until the service is installed, and still get the same rate for any services that we tell them about up until the installation. If we change services, after we install, those would be at whatever new rate. So we looked at what we expect our needs to be in the new library, and they provided this quote accordingly. We budgeted on the conservative side, so we'd be adding things and not taking away, just to be careful. But we would be able to have 7 simultaneous phone calls. We'd be able to have enough direct phone numbers for the staff that would require them, with a few things for us to still iron out. And then we would need to have an internet connection that we don't have on our own now, that would allow for the voice over internet phones. We would not have an actual traditional phone line to our building, no analog line. And so the internet connection would be required for the phone lines, which cannot be on our network equipment through the South Central Library system. The benefit of that is it also would serve as a backup. So when we have that outage in a couple weeks, we don't have a backup internet, which means we're scrambling to provide service. This would allow us to have a backup internet as long as TDS isn't awarded the Badgernet contract for service to our building, in which case they have made this a month-to-month option. So if they get awarded our Badgernet contract, then they can't provide the redundant service because if their line gets cut, it doesn't help us, and which then we would have to go back and find another redundant provider for that backup service. Are there any questions?
Question?
Yes?
Does this include both installation of the hardware and the service contracts as well?
I believe so. On the bottom of the quote for the pricing, they do have the installation fees, costs and waived for those.
Okay.
So that's my understanding. They also will be, as a separate thing, are working on getting the conduit to the building, that there's no charge for them to do that. We contacted them back in January to try to get them to get their fiber in while it was easy to do before things were,
Paved.
parking lots and things were paved, so.
But it's really, during the construction phase, wildly important.
Yes.
They're still working on, they didn't actually get in with Alliant, like they were hoping to do it, but they're gonna be direct burying, their conduit. And so that shouldn't be a problem. There's, conduit that will allow them into the building, and then there's a place for them to go with their direct buried fiber.
Okay, great. So I would like to make that motion.
Okay. Is there a second to approve the TDS?
I will.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. 10-year capital improvement plan?
So the village just last year changed their capital improvement planning from a shorter term planning process to a 10-year capital process, which is great because it gives them a better overview and understanding of needs for different departments. It is a little challenging to know exactly what your needs will be 10 years down the road, but overall it's going to be beneficial to all departments. You have in your packet the memo from, or the information from Administrator Shanks about what qualifies as a capital purchase. So they only want to include things that are more than $5,000 and have a usable life of a certain period, just to make sure that they're not borrowing, because capital projects are typically borrowed for. There are a couple items that we consider capital purchases as the library because we don't have money in our annual operating budget to cover those. So I've highlighted those here, the AED, the disc repair machine, and computers and peripherals. So the AED and disc repair machine are not big enough purchases to qualify for the capital plan, but they are also too big for us to plan for in our annual operating budget. So we'll, one option is we have not contingency, general fund for budget funds that are unspent at the end of the year, and using those for capital purchases like this would be appropriate if there's available funds. So that would be one option. The other option would be is if we knew in advance that was the year to replace that certain item, we would have to ask for a one-time increase in our budget to accommodate that specific item. So there's ways to do that. We also recently purchased the wireless access points for the new library, and so those need to be, at some point, will be due for replacement. In the past, it was up to libraries to replace those, but South Central has changed their plan that they now collect port fees every year so that they will pay for the replacement cost. At least at this point, their plan is that they will be budgeting so that they can pay for the replacement cost at any points, and we would just be responsible for adding any additional points that we have not existed in our service area before. So that's good news. And then computers and peripherals, we do have an annual budget. We replace things, computers on a 5-year rotating schedule so that we don't have a significant investment in any one particular year. The one thing we'll have to think about is the makerspace. Once we know what we are able to include as part of equipment, we'll have to consider how to plan for replacement and repair of that. So right now, the only addition to the capital plan improvement worksheet, the borrowing has already taken place, and that was, just included so they could see what was going on in the current year. The self-checkouts and the AMH were already submitted last year. The only new addition is the ViewScan digital reader and printer, and that's basically allows us, our community, to access microfilm of historic newspapers and historic resources. Currently, we have the most current model available, and we're not sure what the future of that technology will be. They also said it had a minimum lifespan of 5 years, but we've found that the life of that goes much longer because we use it only for that purpose. So we may not need to replace it here, but this is what we're expecting based on best practice at the moment, and we can always reevaluate the need or the function. But right now it's a great resource for our community. So this is due to the village on the 23rd or the 24th, I believe. So we would need the library board to approve, to make any changes you wish to make, and then to approve this. The one caveat I'll say is there may be elements of the new building that have a usable lifespan of less than 10 years that we're not aware of yet, and so we would need to add those in if we become aware of something that we know will need to be replaced in year 9 or something like that, or at least, try to plan for that in the future.
Yeah.
This is me not knowing anything about this.
Yes.
What is an automated materials handling system?
Some people call it a sorter, so many libraries that
Exactly.
kind of our size is the kind of time where sometimes it makes sense and sometimes it doesn't. So as we grow, libraries like Fitchburg have a sorter so that when items are returned, they're automatically checked in people's accounts using RFID technology, and then they're pre-sorted to staff, so when staff get to them, they're already checked in and they're sorted into usable like 8 different bins, and so things that are going back to their home libraries are sorted, things that go to the children's area can be sorted, so that it makes things more efficient, so staff is handling each item only once, instead of handling it to check in, handling it to transfer it, and handling it to sort it. It reduces like stress injuries, repeat injuries for staff, it makes things more efficient. But there's a big investment towards it, and there is an annual maintenance fee that goes along with maintaining that equipment, so.
And isn't this something that we were not sure if we wanted to add quite yet because of budgetary constriction, and now it looks like we can? Is that what I'm
No,
saying?
we're not adding it.
It's planned for year 2020,
2030.
2030.
That would be
So-
the hope,
we
is
made
in
room
2030,
for
we
it, I
can,
think.
we planned for room for it,
Yeah.
and then in 2030, we're hoping to buy it.
So we're expecting the opportunity.
We're planning for, yes, I mean, we're still at that point where we need a certain number of bodies and people to do certain things, so we can't really cut staff to pay for it in terms of operating, because we need those people to do those things. And so we're not quite to the point where we have enough staff where that we could consider doing that.
Okay.
And so that's kind of where it's planned for the future. We would benefit from it right now, but we right now aren't the point where it would save us staff because we need those people to do things, and if they weren't doing this, they would need to be doing something else.
And
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and there's some self-checkout machines, but we just got some, so are these replacements?
Yes, so they're supposed to be replaced every 7 to 8 years.
Okay.
So we purchased 2. We're hoping to add a 3rd one at some point. This is budgeting for replacement of 4 as we grow.
4.
If we get to a point and we only need to replace 2, then that's all we would replace. But that's kind of just planning for the future based on other libraries of similar size. That seems to be the right number in a perfect world.
It really increases efficiencies.
It does. Right now, last month, after we installed the new one, I think about 70 to 75% of our checkouts were by self-check. So if we had to have a staff person handle all those items, it wouldn't be feasible. So we're trying to promote more use of that for people who find that helpful, and that frees up our time to help folks who don't find that helpful or who have more sophisticated questions. We're also increasing what we have the RFID tags on, so magazines and newspapers, some collections, board books that didn't have RFID before, to make those easier so people can just use everything. Also, things coming from other libraries historically had sometimes been tagged and not, so it would be harder to use, and we're trying to just make it really easy for people to use so that we can save staff time.
And they're fun to use.
Fun to use too, yeah.
Yeah, fun to
They're fun, I like it.
Okay. Any other questions?
This is really helpful. There's not a question, just having the project worksheets with the explanation is really helpful. This is the part that I printed in my phone.
Oh, yeah.
Can I have a motion to approve the capital improvement plan?
So moved.
Is there a
Second.
Second? Questions? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, thank you. I have to go in 2 minutes, so someone's gonna have to take over for me.
Guess we do.
I didn't tell you that part, sorry.
Surprise.
Adoption of the Village of Oregon Employee Handbook.
So this has been approved by the village board. It's been developed by Administrator Shanks with the past handbook available, reviewed by village attorneys, the village board. Employees including library employees, have had a chance to provide a lot of feedback as part of it. The main intent was to better capture what was currently going on, because the handbook hadn't been updated in many, many, many years. But in addition, there's a few areas where policies have changed to be more generous to employees, like funeral leave, or just spelling out things a little bit more clearly, what was really being done. So in general, there's not a whole lot of policy changes. The memo from Martin in there did highlight a few of the policy changes that are included. As a library board, statutorily, you have a unique role in which that you could set your own policies. However, I feel the village and Martin have done an incredible job with this, so it would be in our best interest of our employees for you to adopt this handbook. What I would like to do is there's just a few unique circumstances as a library that either this doesn't apply fully to us, or that we just need some clarifications to make sure it's clear for our employees. So what I would do then is, I think we should approve this tonight so that we have this in place, just like all the other village employees, so our employees have the same benefits and procedures. But then we'll go through with a kind of a more detail and just address those few circumstances where we have special circumstances, and do an addendum that we would approve at a future board meeting to address those special situations. This would ensure our employees are covered in the meantime, we're following all the proper procedures, and then gives a chance to clean up any weird situations. Like one example is other departments are asked to use village vehicles for travel for work. We have a lot of programs held off-site, and we don't have a village vehicle available, so we would be traveling more to get the village vehicle than we would be just doing the traveling to begin with. So that's like kind of a typical thing for us, that we don't have transportation while many of the other departments do. So that's an example of something that we'll just address clearly for our department, so it doesn't seem like our employees are not following the protocol. Does that make sense? Does anybody have questions?
I don't have any questions, but I do have one comment, and that is that as part of the DEI committee, one of the things that we're going to begin doing now that we've done some of the initial work is to be taking a look at all the village's ordinances and policies, and try to just think about them through a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens. And so we don't anticipate that there's going to be anything earth-shattering that changes about those things, but just is something to know.
And this is intended to be like a living document, so it's not intended to be, okay, throw it in a drawer for 20 years. It's intended to be revisited as situations come up, or we understand that a certain thing might need to be addressed and isn't clear, that they'll be continuing to take feedback and revisit it. But the main goal is to get it improved over where it had been, to a point where it's usable and easy to reference for staff and community members. So it's a benefit to everybody, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Can I have a motion to adopt the Village of Oregon Employee Handbook?
So,
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, Larry, can you take over? Actually, go coach a softball game because the other coach is not available, so.
Good luck.
Thanks.
All right, looks like we are now on to declaration of surplus.
Yay.
Oh, sorry,
don't-
village board schedule, I skipped one.
So optimistic me thought that I would do what I normally do in a year and have you a preliminary budget information to talk about tonight, and I did not. And I thought, oh, I'll still have it in time to talk about something really significant by the meeting, and I do not. So what I can tell you is that we have been working to get some preliminary costs for things like monitoring for the new building, for systems that we didn't have before. We'll be working on getting updated maintenance costs for different things that will change when we move. We don't have those numbers. The main property insurance will go up, so that's a main increase to our budget. And then the main increases that we are expecting are from the personnel committee met, and we are definitely wanting to ask for that teen librarian position that we requested last year and then deferred, and then also had the conversation about potentially needing some page hours that the personnel committee discussed. So those will be incorporated in kind of a preliminary budget that gets presented to you next month in July, when we have some more numbers. Right now it's all kind of up in the air, and as some of the systems for our building get finalized, we'll be able to get better numbers on some of those maintenance costs. The other thing we'll be working with the village on is, cleaning services and how to handle that. We did get a cost proposal from our current cleaner, and so we'll be working on making sure that we have those services in place when we move. But again, for some services we'll be doing a big exploration this year, and for other services we'll just need to get them in place, and then next year we'll be able to revisit and make sure we're getting the best possible pricing, and some of our expectations about what we will need for those services may change as we settle into the facility. So I guess I don't have a lot of numbers, but I just want to make sure that that the personnel committee did talk about the need for the additional staff. We've been kind of trying to increase slowly over the last 5 years, but the community's been growing, and we've been just kind of keeping up, and we do really need that teen librarian position, especially with just all the growth we have, and just haven't been able to add that position in the past because of lack of workstations, lack of competitive wages, and now we're kind of in a position where we kind of addressed a lot of those things, and would like to be able to offer a decent position to attract some great talent to help that team who's spread very thin at the moment. So are there any questions? I know there's nothing really in front of you, but I just wanted to highlight where we're going, and our conversation will be next month.
I would like to comment that you have an amazing staff and they're always very kind, considerate, and helpful. I mean, it's great. I don't know what kind of magic you have over there.
I don't have magic, but they do, so I'll tell them that you appreciate them.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Now declarations.
So I might end up moving this just to the consent agenda because we're working really hard to purge unnecessary items that are kind of past their useful life and try to explore other solutions for the new library that better fit the space and arrangements we have. So we have some spinners that we're kind of preparing the collection. So we have some spinners that we're no longer using to try to get the collection organized in the way that we will when we move, so we can just move it in order instead of having to try to interfile while we're moving. So we'd like to declare those spinners surplus. It's possible we may use them a little bit longer, but we know we're gonna part ways with them at some point shortly. So would like to be able to declare them surplus so we can find a new home once we're ready to do that.
You need a motion?
Yes.
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Moving on to proposed changes to the Dane County Library Service Plan and Standards.
So this is something that I think tonight, for purposes tonight, I just want to introduce. We don't need to talk about it, but if you have questions or comments, we certainly can talk about it. Dane County is reviewing their standards in light of just the world today, and they kind of do that in every few years. To change the standards requires sign off of all the libraries in Dane County as well as the Dane County Library Board. So in your packet you have a list of proposed changes and then a standard resolution that would be used to adopt the changes, kind of also highlighting what those changes are. So kind of including that, hey, we should be providing Wi-Fi to our patrons as a standard level of service. They're also saying for once libraries get to a certain point that there should be some credit for staffing, that they can have some self-checks and sorters to help offset some staff hours. They're still working on figuring out how that is. So there's just a few changes here that they're noting. They're asking for us to provide any feedback and ask questions between now and August. They'll provide an updated version to the Dane County Library Board in September, and then they'll be presenting whatever version back to us in October for us to consider. So if you have questions on what you see here or comments, now's a great time to read through it, or you can bring them to a future meeting over the summer, and then we just want to make sure those are provided in time to shape the outcome if you have concerns or questions or comments.
A really silly one.
Yes.
So do we fall under the government responsibility of the Dane County Library Board?
So we, in order to get our Dane County funding, which we get around $200,000 every year, we have to meet the Dane County standards we're supposed to meet the Dane County standards. You can fall short in a year. You kind of have, it's like you get a few years to address it too. So like if you have a 1 year where something isn't quite where it needs to be, you have a little bit of an opportunity to address it. But we do want to meet those standards or it could compromise our funding.
So would you say they're more of an advisory board than a governmental board, a governing board?
They're a county level board. They're like this board, but through the county instead of a village.
Yeah.
So they're still a governing board, I guess I would
Do they
say.
have jurisdiction over us?
They can take away our money. Like, they have money that, like, if we don't meet the standards, we don't get the money.
Yeah, so
Well, allotted through them.
you don't report to them, so they're not managing you, so you're an independent board,
Okay.
but basically you're a board that you're agreeing to follow their standards to get the money. So there's like, each year we have an agreement with them to provide services to Dane County residents, and they agree to pay us for that. They wouldn't have to do it in the way that they do. If we didn't meet the standards, they could choose to fund that
Do
differently.
they audit us to be sure that we're meeting those standards?
So we do, each year when we fill out the annual report, they do take those numbers. They, I think a month or two ago, we looked at those standards and they evaluate each library to make sure they're meeting the standards. If you fall short of the standard, they give you a warning letter, letting you know what the standard is, and then give you, work with you to help correct that and get it where it needs to be. Oftentimes the standards are minimum, and if you were actually at that level, you might not be happy with the service level you're providing for some of the standards anyway. So in general, most of the standards are kind of set as like a minimum, and we would probably want to be above those in most cases.
And are we?
Yes,
That was
we
like
meet all the standards
That was
currently.
like a 90-page report that you presented to us, right? The one that didn't.
The self-reporting?
The
The one
annual
that
report.
didn't print the way
Yes.
it looked, yes.
Yes, because they were having technical difficulties the
Yes,
day
it was
before
like-
meeting, yes.
It was like a book.
Yeah, and so it's a report that we provided the DPI that there's specific instructions on how to track every statistic that the library keeps. And so Dane County takes the numbers from that report because all libraries are asked to report in the same way so that they're comparing apples to apples when they look at the
So we got a good grade.
standard.
We get the money.
We're meeting what we need to meet.
Come
yeah.
on,
It's like a pass-fail though.
that's your competitive, all right?
Okay, we're getting a good grade, John. Getting a good grade.
Along with all the other libraries in Dane County, yes.
We're
Sorry.
all doing great.
I wanna be number one.
It's not, there's
It's
no
not
bell curve here.
competition.
No?
No.
Got it. You don't get a ranking?
So I do have a question. Are there any things when you read this that you think, why didn't they mention that?
Not in particular. I haven't given it a lot of thought, to be honest, but I will give that some more thought. They are reducing, like taking out some of the standards, like for computer use, because just the nature of how people use things has changed since the pandemic. So they're just trying to simplify a little bit with some transitions to digital for some libraries to give them more flexibility to choose between those two instead of being locked in to meet a certain number. They want to make sure that the numbers are reflecting actual service to patrons and not just numbers to meet a number. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so one of the things that occurs to me in the times that we live is that there's a lot of pressure on some libraries in some places in our state and in our country to ban books or to cut certain things out of libraries. And I wonder if Dane County Library Services has some kind of standard that they want to say, or some sort of process that they think libraries should have implemented if there's a call for something like that.
So that's a local library control, generally it's a local
Okay.
library control to determine their own process like we do for fines and fees and issues like that. There are some ALA, the ALA statements that we've adopted. Many of the other libraries, I think probably all the libraries in Dane County have adopted the freedom to read statements that we've reviewed over the past couple of months about intellectual freedom. And so I know that's something most libraries in Dane County follow. Each library has a slightly different process based on their board and their staff about how they handle concerns for that. And then that's kind of a local library, at present,
Yeah,
it's kind of
my
more of a
question is
local library
more
issue about how to determine how to handle
Wonder,
those.
not that they would determine what the process is,
Oh,
but
okay, I
that they would
misunderstood.
have a standard, one of their standards would be that all libraries have a process, so that it's not just a willy-nilly kind of
I
thing.
can share that comment with them.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Thank you, everybody. Moving on to information items. Library of Things from the Wisconsin State Journal.
So the State Journal did a nice article talking about non-traditional collections in libraries and included us as one of the features in the article, so that was kind of nice. I just wanted to make sure all of you had a chance to see that article. If you hadn't, it was kind of under a paywall on Facebook if you saw it there. So kind of fun to celebrate the good media.
Yeah.
And committee reports. Anything else from the nominating committee, Laura or Karen?
No, I think I've about covered it.
Okay. We'll go on to the personnel committee. Laurel, anything you want to share?
No, I mean, I guess not everybody was here when we were discussing it. We are going to I am going to write the director's evaluation probably in the next week or so, and then we will meet as a personnel committee again. So we'll have something to share at the July meeting, which will require us to go into closed session. And then, as Jennifer mentioned, we also did do some discussion of upcoming needs around staffing, particularly the teen librarian, and how we want to present that to the wider village board and community. Yeah. nothing special. Thank you, everybody on the board, for responding to this survey I sent out. I appreciated that.
You had everyone respond?
Yeah.
Really? Did I respond?
I think so.
I don't think I
How many of us are there?
I don't think I had.
You might not have.
I don't think I did.
Counting myself. I have 5, that's pretty good.
But you will have mine.
Sounds good. I'm gonna write it over the weekend, so
Okay.
sooner the better.
Thank you for doing that.
It's my secret superpower, so I like to use it.
Human resources?
I wrote hundreds of reviews in my time at Epic,
Really?
so this is like second nature.
Riding a bike.
Yep, it's probably one of the best things I can offer y'all, but really, it's a weird
We'll
skill
take it.
set.
We'll
Here we
take
are.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good to know. Thank you.
Okay, library director's report.
So we've had a super busy week at the library. One of our busiest days was the day before Dane County and Public Health shut everything down before the pandemic. We were just so super busy that day. Monday was actually busier than that. So we had over 600 visitors that day and 230 of them from 10 to noon, and it was just really, really busy. So 2019 was the last time during our New Year's party that we had that many visitors kind of in a short period of time. So that's just kind of, we're back from the pandemic officially, I believe. So that's kind of fun. I'm gonna just pull this up to make sure I talk about the other important things. The CDS funding through Senator Baldwin's office, they did get a waiver that was being published for public input, and I don't know the status of that waiver at this point, but the USDA staff at the end of May said that it would apply to our project. If they finalized it, they were waiting on guidance from their national office, so that was good news. Yesterday, I submitted the final application requirements of the financial data and verification of funding because we had to wait till the village borrowing went through, and we finally got that paperwork. So we've submitted everything. What the USDA told me is that they were going to request that the national office transfer the funds to the Wisconsin office at the end of May, that funds would be there at the beginning of June, like last week, and that they would review all of our items and then issue an award letter with any contingencies once they knew the result of the waiver. So I'm hoping that we'll get a award letter that has no contingencies or very specific things about you need to provide this documentation and then you'll be set. So I'm optimistic about that. I'm going to be off next week. When I get back, I'll follow up and just see if we haven't heard on the status of that waiver and just see when we'll know more. Hopefully that we can get that off of our list and be able to send things to those folks.
You promise you'll relax and not worry?
Yes. Spend a lot of time
That
on it.
didn't sound convincing, but okay.
Yes. The other thing I want to note is that we are communicating that the deadline to be included on donor recognition, at least the donor wall, is July 20th. All gifts will be included in the donor booklet. We do have a little bit more time, so if somebody were to give a gift after July 20th, we could still get them in the booklet, but we're encouraging people that are contemplating making a donation to do so by July 20th. All gifts will be in the donor booklet, and then gifts totaling $1,000 or more, which can be payable in multiple installments, will be recognized on the donor wall for those who choose to be recognized, and anybody who wanting not to be listed or to be anonymous can certainly opt out. So that's just kind of an important deadline. We want to make sure nobody misses the chance to get their name on that donor recognition wall. It's going to be pretty wonderful, so we want to put that out there. Our summer reading program started, so there's the link to sign up in your packet. The program's for all ages, so I encourage you to check out what's available and tell folks you know about it. There was also, if any of you went to the art fair in the park last weekend, we did have the art cart there. And then they also had a story time at the library to kind of complement that event. The South Central data system move that was supposed to affect our services in May got postponed with 2 weeks notice. So the new move is the end of June, which actually happens to be one of our probably top 2 or 3 busiest weeks of the year. So we are going to stay open and do our best. We have a mobile hotspot kit from the system that we're going to use with some dongles and hope that we can just do the best we can to serve as many people as possible. We won't have internet computers, but we're going to do the best we can to serve folks. The village did have 2 new trustees that joined the village board, including Lynn McDaniel and Tom Kurtzdorfer. to fill some vacancies created by trustee Van Campen becoming president and by Representative Jenna Jacobson resigning around that time. So those folks will be joining us, so feel free to introduce yourselves or, greet them if you see them around or know them in the community. The Village Hall has moved to their new location. And I think that is kind of the highlight of what I want to talk about. If you have questions about anything else you see in the packet, you can let me know. You also have the calendar highlighting some of our summer events that are going on. Kelly and Kara have a great array of programs for the summer reading program and just in general. And then you also see the monthly statistics report that Alicia provided as well. She's also going to be tracking self-check use for us, so at some point you might see, what percentage of that added to the packet. Are there any questions?
Hope to see everybody at the plant swap tomorrow. I'm really excited.
The what?
Plant swap.
Plant
I think we should go play a lot. I can keep
So
kids
if you
alive.
bring a plant, you can trade with others that bring plants.
Is this a library thing?
Yeah,
Where's the thing that's
It's on the
it?
calendar.
it's on the calendar. It's 1 o'clock
Oh
tomorrow.
my gosh, why did I miss that?
Well, now you know, they're still done.
No, thank you, Jennifer. These statistics are really cool. It looks like we're bouncing back.
Yeah, Alicia does a nice job of preparing them for us, so appreciate her doing that.
Yeah. Okay, moving on, communications. Any village board announcements?
Yeah, well, Jennifer stole my thunder with the 2 new board members. Many of you probably know Tom Kirchhofer has done a lot with OCA Media and has sometimes been here. And Lynn McDaniel is fairly new to the community, young mom, former teacher, former social studies teacher, so I could relate totally. And then just to let you know a couple of other things, Amanda Peterson, also a trustee, and I went to the to the Senate Committee on Shared Revenue, something else, and Consumer Protection to testify on the shared revenue bill that is still not passed. To just let them know our concerns about the kinds of restrictions and prohibitions that they were putting on local control and home rule. So we spoke out against it there. There have been a couple of articles in the paper about some of that as well. And so we did testify there. The biggest impacts are really on the city of Milwaukee and the county of Milwaukee, but there's also some things that are pretty universal, like they're eliminating the ability for local governments to put advisory referendum onto the ballot and at the village or town level or the county level unless they are specifically about municipal and county issues. So there's one more way that our voices are being
Stifled.
Thank you. Thank you, yes, are being muffled at least, and there has been talk among some folks that this could be a First Amendment violation because of the right to petition the government. So stay tuned for that. That's one of those things. And then there are some other requirements that are pretty onerous. So that's one thing, and we did go and testify. The other thing to know is that the Black History for a New Day class is done, but that was just one piece of diversity, equity, inclusion training through Nehemiah, and look for an email to come from Candy with a survey. It's an anonymous survey to just get a feel from village staff, trustees, committee members, and board members, including the library board, about how we feel the village is doing on some of these issues, and most of them are yes, no, making progress, not sure answers, but it's to give the folks at Nehemiah kind of an overall picture of how we are doing as a village. And there will be an open house to be able to talk to the Nehemiah folks later in the summer or early fall. So again, look for information about that. We did contract with them for 9 modules. They'll probably be a 2-hour session once monthly, beginning in the fall. And it will be open for folks to sign up to. It's not, my understanding, now, and don't quote me on this because it hasn't been completely decided, but my understanding is that this will be probably highly encouraged for administration and department heads, and then other key staff members and electeds will have options. And it'll be in groups of 20 to 25 people. So just know that that's coming, and if you're interested, certainly Candy will be the person sending that out, and the survey will be due back July 28th, which is the last Friday in July. And let's see, border review is done as of this morning. So that's about it.
Thank you, Harley. Any school district announcements? I think she would probably, Leslie would just say, school's out.
I think they're like a visioning committee meeting tonight if I got it right, but.
Okay. So our next meeting will be July 14th. Does anyone have any?
Can I just add something as far as school announcements go?
Yeah.
So I know that there was a bill that was voted on today in the Senate. The budget, the state budget is still in negotiation, and there are a lot of education things that are happening in that state budget, including an incredibly large increase to voucher funds that was taken out of the budget and introduced as a separate bill. So public education folks, that's just something to know. If you want to know more, the Wisconsin Public Education Network website has lots of information, and I encourage you to go there and look at it. So you're keeping yourself informed, and you're writing letters to the editor, and you're calling Jenna Jacobson and Matt Markspreitzer and letting them know.
Did you do requests for agenda items?
I was kidding.
Oh,
Yep.
The one thing I want to just mention is we are trying to get our proposals together for shelving and office furniture order for July. But for August, we have to try to wrap everything else up in time to approve it and then also order it. And with some of the kids' furniture relating to what we do with the graphic wall, we're going to be kind of cutting it close to have those numbers in time for our August meeting. So it's possible we may need to schedule a very brief second meeting in August to make sure we order all those items in time to arrive for us to move in. So just a heads up on that.
I think that is well worth our time.
Yes. When did you say the July meeting was?
July 14th.
Isn't it really July 12th?
I don't know. I'm just going off.
I quite possibly had an error in the date.
Yes,
It is the
because
12th. Okay.
And
July 12th.
I am running 2 days late on everything, optimistically 2 days late,
I have
so
to make an
it is
indication
the
that
12th.
I'll
Yeah.
be in Michigan at a Rotary Youth Exchange Conference. That'll be on a bill.
Thank you, Jen.
Any other future agenda items anybody would like to see? Okay, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Lauren.
Yeah.
It's like hard for people